Hi, my name's Jonathan Hicks. I'm back at the Dice Cup, and this evening I'm joined by Steve,
Mark.
and we're just finished playing Ankh, Gods of Egypt, which is a big Cool Mini or Not game from Eric M. Lang, and there's a lot going on. So it's kind of dudes on the map. In this case, I was this sort of orangey colour, and we're fighting for control. Is a big area control element to this game. You can see there are various like pyramids and monoliths and things, and this token here indicates that it's mine. So you can see Steve controls this temple because it's green. But in terms of actually how you go about trying to conquer and do stuff, ultimately you're trying to get points, I should say. Like Rising Sun or the other kind of Eric M. Lang games in recent years, there's a devotion track here, and winning battles and gaining control of temples and things gets you points, and the first person to ascend to the top of this track wins the game. That's it. How do you actually play the game? Well, on your turn, you're going to be taking one of 4 actions, and you can move your troops. So each of your troops can move up to 3 spaces. So this guy can go 1, 2, 3, for example. You can hop over anything. You can travel through other people. As long as you finish on an empty space, it's fine. The second kind of action you can do is you can recruit more people. And essentially, if you you can recruit one guy, only one guy next to one of your people, unless you build the pyramids and you unlock their ability. There's a tech tree here, which I'll come back to, but the tech tree ability of pyramids is you can summon an extra guy next to each of your pyramids. So you can see we've got quite a few pyramids around the board here, which is allowing us to summon a lot more miniatures each time we get more guys. The next thing you can do is gain currency. They're called followers in this game, but it's like money. And again, like Rising Sun, you can kind of spend this in battle for various advantages. Also, if you want to build monuments, they cost these followers. And there's a couple of other things. Upgrading your tech tree also requires followers. So this is currency. Finally then, you can do the Ankh movement, which allows you to upgrade your tech tree. And you sort of have to work left to right. At the start of the game, you have these tokens are, well, if I can get them out, they're all along the bottom, and you have to work left to right. So the first one you upgrade has to be this one, and it goes on one of these spaces. Then the second one's this one, and it goes on this space. Then you get to do some level 2 powers. And level 3 powers, I won't go through all of them, as you can see there's quite a lot. But they're pretty good. And if you manage to uncover a spot with the scarab underneath it, then you gain one of these sort of special minis, like the baboon creature here, which is an extra troop that you can summon onto the board. You're actually quite limited. Oh yeah, and he has a special ability, Babby. You're quite limited in the number of troops you have, so getting access to extra miniatures that you can then summon on the board is quite an important part of the game. So yes, deciding how to upgrade this is quite important. This first column kind of gets you at various ways extra followers. This middle one makes the monuments powerful. So like this is how we're getting the extra ability with the pyramids. The obelisk ability is you can, at the start of a battle, teleport units next to the obelisk. So that's quite handy. And the temples increase your strength as well. And the final column basically allows you to score points. So for example, after a battle you can spend the followers, the money, to gain a devotion, which is a victory point. So there's various ways of getting extra points once you get to this final stage. But the interesting thing here is that when you always take 2 actions on your turn, and you have to take a higher action before you can make a lower action. So you might really want to summon your people and then move them, but you're not allowed to do that because you have to do the top actions before you do the bottom actions. The other thing is that when you land on one of the white spaces at the end of the track, you trigger this, which is kind of like a timer for the game. This token starts over here. Each time somebody triggers one of the white things, it advances a space, and when it gets to here, if somebody hasn't reached the top of the track, then most points wins. But also triggers various things. So when you move onto one of these spaces, you get to take control of a temple. If you move onto one of these spaces, combat happens. You're not moving miniatures into other spaces to trigger combat. In this game, it just happens simultaneously, if you like, once somebody triggers that space there. You resolve all the different regions, like Rising Sun, so that's region 1, this is region 2, etc., in order, and essentially most troops in the region wins. I'll come back to combat in a second. Camels let you split up the regions. You see we actually split this region, so this was one big region at the start, but we split it into 3 in fact, so region 6, region 2 and region 5 by placing the camels. So it's quite strategic how you place them. I'll come back to why that's important in combat in a second. And there's a couple of key things in this game that we'll probably talk about a lot in the comments. when it gets to this point, the two people in lowest place in terms of victory points merge together and become one player, and they kind of work together cooperatively. There's a whole bunch of things that happen. All of their monuments of the lowest player gets removed from the board, but the powers kind of combine. In this case, I combined with Mark. I was Ptah and he was Osiris, but now you can see I'm merged with Osiris because Steve was in the lead when we got to this stage here. That's quite unusual. The other thing that's quite important is when it gets to this stage, if your victory point is still in this red region here before you got to the blue regions, then you're just eliminated. Like, you're out of the game completely if you haven't managed to get to at least this point by that stage. So it's really important that you get your points up by that stage. Now the final thing then is fighting. It's very important how this works. You have a hand of cards, and it's a bit like Kemet if you're familiar with that. Everyone has exactly the same hand of cards, so you're picking one to play, and it's kind of rock, paper, scissors. So the kind of things that you could do, like I imagine I just went for this one, which gives me lots of strength, but Steve plays the build monument card. So that's another way you can get the monuments out, is you can build monuments kind of during battle. Other things you can do are, you can have a Plague of Lotus, which just kills all of the units in a region, except for the one person who bids the most followers. So there's like a secret bid, you put them in your hand, you reveal them, and whoever bid the most gets to keep all the followers, but everyone else, all of them die. There are a few ways, again like Rising Sun, you can get points when people die. So this one gets you points for having people on green spaces. This, when they die, you get your points. This one, if they're on desert spaces, you get points. So the other cards don't help much. You see, it's only one adding to the combat strength, but you're potentially getting lots of points. You can't reuse cards in subsequent battles until you play your Cycle of Mats card, which does nothing for you and has no ability, but then you get to retrieve all your cards so you can use them all again. So more or less that's how combat works, but then after combat, whoever wins combat gets a point on the track, and then you're also scoring majorities for the different monuments. So whoever has the most pyramids in an area gets a point, most obelisks in an area gets a point, and whoever has the most temples in an area gets a point. And because there's quite a few areas, because they keep getting split up with the camels by the end of the game, actually you can get a lot of points by having lots of different monuments around the board. Whew. What do we think?
I think you'll know if you like this game. It is not an area of games I generally enjoy. I've enjoyed this play, and I've enjoyed it because there are significant differences with others in its ilk. I think it's closest to Rising Sun with the regions, and they score when it comes to a region scoring phase. They score in order, and there's some creatures or some guys that can move from one region to another, some of the special guys or whatever different abilities the special guys have. We pick from a stack at the start. And that's nice, the planning. It's not just trying to score each region, it's the order of the region and the rock, paper, scissors thing of the cards. Like if I play this, but Jonathan plays that card, and then Mark does this thing, well, that's bad for me. So maybe I play this, but then if no one does that thing, then I don't do whatever. And that's nice. I think the followers are important. And in Rising Sun you could use them for many different things. In this it feels like you can use them for one of your cards, or you use them as currency. It feels like they're not as diverse, or there's not as many diverse combat things you can do in this one. You can profit by dying, you can profit by not having many troops on the board at certain points, you can get your abilities that profit for various bits and bobs, and each god has a special player power. But the thing that will kind of make this game different for you is the couple of things on the devotion track. The losing the game if you're not at a certain point at a certain stage of the game, which sort of makes sense. If you're at that point in the game anyway, you're probably not winning, but if it's a low scoring game, one person might just eke into blue and everyone else might die. But the merging of the gods, I was not significantly ahead, but I was moderately ahead, and I had some abilities that would score me points for just doing some stuff. So I was feeling kind of confident, and then Mark and Jonathan merged. And they thought, well, it's even better. They went down to Mark's score because he was a few points behind Jonathan, so my lead actually increased. But they could take one action each, but they could take the same action. So on this track, the track down here, this is amazing. But we were at this point in the game, and Jonathan and Mark got this because they went bang bang, and then they got to do this, and then I did some stuff, and then they went bang bang, or I was pushing one away, and they got to do this, and they got to do this, and then they got to instigate the combat. So it felt like I had the actual possibility of losing. I felt in a much worse position. And I imagine in a 4-player game, it gives those two people who are further behind, a better chance at doing well. It might be different if you're not consecutive in turn order. So if you're playing a 4-player game and the 2 people opposite each other team up, you've not got that ability to trigger those bonuses, which are very important. I feel like I managed the bonuses better. Every time there was a bonus on offer, I felt like I had a good shot at doing it. You need to make sure that, well, I have no idea, but on my next turn, if there's a bonus ready for me to take, I'm going to move on this turn, so I'm in a position to capture that pyramid, or I'm in a position to put these troops out, or I'm in a position to fight, if someone can give me the opportunity to fight. And interestingly, you've got to do the top action before the bottom action, and if your top action gets you the bonus, it's the only action you can do. And so sometimes you think, well, I don't mind moving the movement one space from the bonus, because if Mark takes it, he only gets one action, although he does get the bonus. So there are some really interesting things in this that make it feel different. But if you played Rising Sun, it feels like you're playing a different version of it.
Okay. Mark?
Yeah, I agree with a lot what Steve says. I do like how the action board works. I think that does pose a lot of problems. Almost to the extent of a bit of AP for some people will literally be thinking, but that's going to cause these set of scenarios to happen. But if I do this set of scenarios, and that's important. That's probably one of the key points of the game. I actually quite like the fact that it's like a hex game. I think the position of things on the board's important, and trying to work out logically things in areas and move stuff about. I think that presents probably the one main thing that's a different challenge to Rising Sun and Blood Rage, which is just more like, here's some regions, so you might move the regions, you get those troops in the region. There is a bit more going on with movement on this to kind of work out that puzzle. In this specific game that we played, the God bit was actually really fun because we were close enough, and the fact we did feel like a level of control. The actual cooperative was quite fun. I'm sorry, but I think it is in this specific game. I think it's still open to either abuse or just if one person's right, like they've got, I don't know, they've had a really bad game, they're on 6-7 points by stage. That's going to be terrible. And the reverse is if all players are within, say, 2 or 3 points of each other, which is perfectly possible, that the ones who have come together are clearly going to win because they will be so much more powerful than everybody else, and you have so much more control over the game state just by being able to move those independently and stuff like that. And actually the powers are big enough a deal that it makes a difference. But overall, yeah, I enjoyed it. I think it's got a good solid engine actually go underneath it, and it is a game. I'm not sure which is the one I prefer the most of them between this and Rising Sun. They are different. Maybe I do like the hexes, maybe not. I will also say one thing. This is a much better 2-player game than any of these style of games because it kind of the zero sum kind of works in this better than stuff like Rising Sun and Kemet and that sort of thing. As you are, again, it's probably due to the troop movement and move things around again. Well, I want to try and win in that area. That means I have to move stuff from here to there. It works better in that case. But overall, I enjoyed it.
Rating?
I would give it a 7.5.
Steve?
I don't like this sort of game. I haven't played 2 players, I haven't played 4 players, and I think it's all going to come down to whether you like that merging. If that merging thing is not for me, then this game's probably not for you. As a caveat, not my sort of game, but I'd play it again, 7.
Okay. Yeah, this is a weird one. I did very badly at the start of this game. There are some mechanisms that help you catch up, which is nice. So although I was dead last for most of it, at the end I sort of got lots and lots of points and pulled ahead of Mark just, and that's the point when we suddenly merged. So I was like, oh, I finally got my engine going because I invested a lot into the technology, and I was like, I think I might stand a chance of maybe not winning, but certainly getting very close. And then it was kind of taken away from me because I had to merge with Mark and a whole pile of stuff changed on the board, and it's really weird. That merging thing is going to be very divisive, and at the end of the day I think you can play with it or not. It's your choice. If you don't want to play with it, just don't play with it. I think the game works absolutely fine without it, but it's certainly interesting if you want to give it a shot. I enjoyed my experience playing the game though, and the decision making is really tricky. Learning this game I think is hard. Not so much these are the rules, but once you know what the rules are, how do you actually form a strategy? How do you decide what you should be doing? I think it's quite easy in this game, particularly the first couple of times you play, to do yourself in the first couple of rounds of the game. Then you're like, oh, I want to start again, everyone. Now I know what I'm doing. It's very much that kind of game. But once you've played it once or twice, you'll be fine, as long as everyone's in the same boat. So I think it's very solid, lots of interesting things here. I would be on an 8 out of 10. Alright, thanks for watching. That was Ankh.